Hello to all of our families joining us a little early. We will get started very soon.
Good evening, families, and thank you for joining us tonight for our monthly family support series. My name is Brian Daniels. My pronouns are he and him, and I am the graduate intern for family programs, and I will be serving as your host for tonight. My I am also joined by the other members of our leadership team, who I will now invite to introduce themselves by sharing their name and telling us a bit about what they do with new students and family programs.
Good evening, families. My name is Camille Clark. My pronouns are she, her, and her, and I am the Associate Director of Family Programs in the Office of New Student and Family Programs.
Hello, families. My name is Mackenzie Nelson. I, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director of Family Programs in the Office of New Student Family Programs.
Good evening, families. My name is Karen Arai Perez. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the family coordinator for New Student Family Programs.
Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. And we do apologize for the late start. We were having some technical difficulties. Now we're going to dive in for the content tonight. So tonight is all about discussing George Mason from the Mason family perspective. Accordingly, we are joined by a few members of our Parent and Family Council. They are here to discuss how you all can support your student throughout their journey at Mason and actively engage with our campus community. These panelists will answer some pre-written questions as well as any questions that you all may have as you submit through our Q&A function. So while panelists are speaking, please feel free to use the Q&A button, with not the chat button, at the bottom of your screen to ask a question. The chat button will actually be used to show you the questions that we are asking to panelists. They will also be included in the slide that I'm displaying while the question is being asked. Additionally, we will also potentially ask follow-up questions as necessary based on the panelists' responses. We also have live transcript and closed captioning available through Zoom should you need it. Furthermore, this entire session will be recorded and posted on both our website and YouTube about 2 weeks after today. Now, I'm going to hand it off to Camille, who will give you all a bit of information about what the Parent and Family Council is before turning it over to our amazing panelists.
All right. Good evening again, families. The Parent and Family Council essentially consists of parents and family members of current Mason students. Everybody can join the council. You don't have to pay any money or donate anything. You actually just have to fill out an application and a short interview to tell us why you are interested in joining the council. They are a very active and engaged part of the Mason community. So they really serve as volunteer liaisons between the university and between families as well. So officially, they come to campus twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, and they get to meet with upper level administrators, such as the president, the vice president of university life, various campus directors. And yeah, they volunteer everywhere. So you will see them at orientation. If you've attended in orientation, you've probably seen them during lunch or during break time. They also volunteer during family weekend. You can also see them at events like Move-In, Family Farewell, and various other events like Homecoming. We'll do a spring basketball game and more. So please look out for them online. Look for them virtually. They're also writing lots of stories as well. And so, yes, I'm so happy that you get to hear a little bit more from them tonight. And I will say, just quickly, our process is that in the late fall semester, probably November or December, we launch our application and then we conduct our interviews in January. The goal is to complete the hiring process and have all of our new members on campus for the March in-person meeting.
All right, thank you, Camille, for sharing that information. So to start, before we get into the Q&A, I'm going to ask each of our fabulous panelists to introduce themselves. Panelists, could you share with us your name, where you're from, and what year your student is at Mason?
I'll go ahead and get started, I guess. I don't know the order, but I'm Natalie Mack, and I am in Alexandria, Virginia. And our current student is a rising sophomore. We have had one graduated 2 years ago from GMU, the Schar School.
Thank you, Natalie.
And I'm Mike Robinson. I have a rising sophomore at GMU in the Applied Computer Science program. Um, Happy to be here.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, my name is Corey Grant. My wife and I are in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and we have a rising second year that's in business and marketing.
Thank you, Corey.
Hi, I'm Chantel, and I am the wife to Kyrie and our daughter Leela. As he said, it's the second year, and we're happy to be here.
Thanks, Chantel. I guess we have the dynamic duo with us tonight.
Yes, yes.
I appreciate y'all introducing yourselves. So now I'm going to go and start asking you all some questions, pre-written questions. But if you, to members of the audience, if you have any of your own, please share them with us through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Other members of our team, including Karen, Camille, and Mackenzie, are able to answer your questions directly through Zoom in writing. If there's something pressing, we may be able to address it during our pre-written questions as well, though we can't necessarily guarantee that for time. If we're unable to answer it live during the webinar, you can certainly also email us anytime at families@gmu.edu should you have any questions. So to start, I'm going to go on ahead and bring us over to the next slide. So council members, how did you help prepare your student for the transition to college? Specifically, what role did you take a part in that process? What do you uniquely remember from their experience?
I remember it was really about creating lists, right? Organization, right? So what do you need? What are the items that you're going to need for college? When do you need to fill out the housing application? When do you need to do this, that, and the other, right? So it was about having these checklists, and then what is going on the checklists, and then kind of checking them off as we went along, to make sure that we were hitting all the marks to get ready for college.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that we did is it feels cruel to her, but we actually started getting up her a little earlier, about a week or so ahead of time, to say, hey, you might have earlier classes, you might want to get up before 1 o'clock and be able to get to your classes or things of that nature. We started really talking to her about friends and friend groups and what does that look like. Some of the more intrinsic things that she may encounter, that you have this idea and then there's a reality that smacks you in the face, really. So we wanted to give her some kind of real understanding of some of of our own experiences in college that she might come across. So yes, lists for sure, Mike, because I'm with you on the list, but those are some of the other things we were trying to do.
Definitely no more getting up at 3 a.m. or going to bed at 3 a.m.
3 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also add to that I think taking advantage of offerings like this one, I did a lot. I was so grateful for all of the different resources that GMU provided for parent education, because I think it just helped me to have a better idea. College has been many years ago and a lot has changed. So I think the more knowledgeable I was, it was easier to help and navigate. And also just the experiences that she was able to have on campus as well. She did a summer week experience with the Peace Institute, and that was an overnight. That was really helpful for her. She was able to spend a day on campus because she asked and wanted to observe classes, and that was arranged, for her so graciously. And she was able to talk to several different students, and including an alum, and just to have time on campus. We're local close, so that was something that we were able to do. But I would say the more education that you can get and to pay attention to the information that's coming your way can also help you help your student as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Chantel.
And I would say for us, we started early too, making sure that we provided our son with opportunities to become more and more independent. And so that meant like signing up for programs such as he was involved in 4-H throughout high school. We are a homeschooling family, so I should put that out in case there's anyone else who has homeschool children. But he was involved in a lot of activities. And so we really kind of focused and helped him understand how to advocate for himself, how to be comfortable saying, hey, can you explain that again? I didn't quite understand that. How to, manage schedules. If someone said, get up a little bit earlier, how to solve problems, not necessarily just step in, but just encourage him that he could do well, he could solve problems. And if he made a mistake, that was usually fixable, right? And so it was just kind of encouraging that independence so that it wouldn't be the first time he made decisions on his own. He walked in, on campus with a measure of confidence that would set him up for greater success.
Thanks for sharing, Natalie. So I really appreciate all of the insight that you all gave about being able to help prepare your student ahead during that transition into college. Now, the next question that I'm going to go on to is a little bit more in-depth and specific. It's got some layered questions on top of it. So what are some tips and strategies for supporting your student during those key first weeks of college? Specifically, how can families be helpful in supporting their student as they adjust and build relationships during their initial few weeks on campus?
Yeah, I think for us, I was actually surprised. I guess I shouldn't be. My son is a little more like my wife. He's a little more extroverted, which is great. And so the adaptation to the first few weeks actually was a little less challenging because he was actually actively trying to meet new people. He was setting up a Discord group for his floor and his dorm and meeting other students along the way as he went. And so it was more about checking in with him periodically, via he likes Discord as a standard form of communication. So just checking in with him periodically on Discord, going, "Hey, what'd you do today?" Or, this thing's coming up, just in case you're interested, right? And that I think that helped both of us kind of understand what he was experiencing at school so far. And the shine was definitely on initially the first few weeks. So it wasn't really until he got into more and more classwork and kind of the routine of schedules and things like that things started to kind of need a little more assistance, I guess, or a little more talking through different things as we were going along. But I felt really good. At least the first few weeks were a really good transition for him.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, Mike, I think we had very similar experiences with the first couple of weeks. It was an easy transition, I would say. There was lots that our daughter was able to do, and she formed connection and friendship, which was really good, and got along. She gets along beautifully with her roommate, so that was also a big plus. And it was when it was kind of into the weeks that she needed more support in terms of just kind of like processing and just having conversation, just really processing. I think she had the answers, but it was just, kind of availing in conversation and being present and checking in. And so, yeah, we had a very similar experience.
Definitely building that relationship with your roommate is very important with that regard. And
yeah,
figuring out how to write that roommate agreement, probably one of the first big challenges you get. Thanks for responding, Chantel. So now with that, I'm going to move on to our next question. So shifting perspective a bit more into the transition, what was your students' social transition to college like? Did they make friends quickly, or did it take time? And how can we as family members encourage our students to make meaningful connections on campus?
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the huge benefits that GMU offers is the residential learning communities, because at least in my son's case, he was able to find his people very fast because they're all in the same dorm and all studying similar subjects. So it was very easy for him to kind of meet new people that had similar tastes, and they, got into the same sort of games or movies or whatever it happened to be, and they would set up movie nights in the dorms and things like that. So I think that definitely helped. We helped him through initially, but kind of talking about uh, some of the things that are available on campus, like all the different groups and things like that, that maybe he could join and find other people that might have similar interests. So, but I can say like there's so many activities, especially right as soon as they're moving in, that it's hard not to meet people. Like you really have to try not to meet people to not meet people.
We kind of started early too, with some of the orientations that we came out, and they would have all the clubs. There was one particular event that we attended prior to his start where all the clubs were set up out on the lawn. And so we just kind of strode through. I saw a few that I wanted to say, hey, you should join that one and you should join that and that. And I realized, let me just hold back and just like, no pressure, just let them just get comfortable seeing what was available. And then he decided to, to contact a few clubs and to get connected. And so the social transition happened pretty well. His roommate did not return for a variety of reasons, not anything with GMU from what I understand, just, personal family things. Second semester, so he was by himself, but he had friends. So he was, and I was worried about him being in a room, outside of classes, just in the room. But actually, he had his friends already established, so that was good.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Natalie and Mike, to add on to your points, it's particular during our first few weeks, we have these sessions called Preamble and Welcome to Mason that students, especially if they're living on campus, will have the opportunity to go to in order to make connections beyond just their residence hall and beyond their roommate. Their roommate will be their first relationship that they build as the person that they're living with, but also even for students who are off campus, they'll be invited and really have even dedicated programming to off-campus students as well through our Office of Contemporary Student Services to ensure that they are included on here. George Mason is predominantly made up of commuter students, and they deserve just to be included just as much as well. Mm-hmm. So regardless, there are plenty of opportunities for students to get socially connected and really become immersed with everything that George Mason has to offer. So thanks for sharing that. So I'm going to move over to our next question, which is just about boundaries. We discussed about for those of you attendees who have attended family orientation, we talk about navigating new boundaries throughout family orientation. But I wanted to ask council members, how did you navigate new boundaries with your student as a young adult during this transition from high school or elsewhere into college?
Yeah, we actually, I think Chantel kind of said it a little bit best, that my daughter is a processor and she needs time to process. So part of the way the boundaries were set was by her. And when she needed to process, when she needed to talk through things, she would call us, specifically her mom, to really talk through some things and to kind of figure out kind of the what's next. Some of it, hey, we had maybe an answer for, but a lot of it was, hey, you have the smarts to kind of figure this out, and there are the resources there to kind of help you kind of work it out. Because the one thing we didn't know and one thing we didn't have all the insight in was specifically all of the requisite resources that she could avail herself to help her through whatever particular issue was. But we knew she had the brain power and the intuition to figure it out. But sometimes she just needed some time to kind of figure that out. And then ultimately it was because in the first few weeks she would come home quite a bit, just because she's so close. She would come home, and over time. And she would tell us everything. And over time, when she met new friends, etc., we heard from her less. And I found, where she was, hanging out here or hanging out there a little more. But I had to give her a boundary that you are a young adult now. And so thus I had to give you the space to explore. And she, really let us in. So she really set the boundaries and we just really respected it.
Yeah. And the thing I could say too is from an academic standpoint, when you go from high school and getting, regular updates on your student as far as how they're doing grades and homework wise and all this other stuff. There's now a new boundary where you're not doing that. You're not able to check in. You're not other than, asking them, right? There's no system to go in and check that information. They're now young adults and they have to do this on their own, and you provide the encouragement as you go. So we certainly kept the dialogue open in regards to how are your classes going? How is the workload? Are you keeping up with assignments? And he was openly discussing issues that he may have had along the way and, helping him navigate that. But like, it is definitely not high school's over. This is a chance for them to succeed on their own. And this is a new boundary for us, as adults to let them really flourish on their own.
That's so true, Mike. And to call to that point, George Mason has to abide by a federal law, as I'm sure many of you are aware, called FERPA, which stands for the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And because of that, and because students are adults, they are the sole owners of their educational record. And accordingly, for better or for worse, we're not able to widely distribute that to family members. That being said, that's why it's so important to build that relationship and set those boundaries and communication, as Kari said, that in order to be able to know what's going on, because you won't have access to that parent portal that you had back in high school. You won't necessarily be able to get that report card when it comes home because it's not going to be able to share that. It's all within your student's hands, and building that relationship and getting that insight as a family member is so valuable. So to both find the perspective of both autonomy and still accountability too. So thanks for sharing with that. So now I'm going to move on to our next slide. So this is more of sort of a scenario question that someone submitted, and I found very interesting. So we've all, or maybe not I, but we've all gotten the call home of your student reporting that there is some sort of issue or concern during their time at college. It could be with their roommate. It could be something as simple as not getting along with the professor. And I was curious if any of you have been in the circumstances, and if so, how have you helped guide your student through that period and help them solve those challenges while at the same time ensuring that the responsibility is still placed on them, as many times the institution will only communicate with the student. Does that question make sense?
It does.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that from an academic standpoint, we definitely directed Sam to write to his professors and communicate with his professors, right, in order to make sure that communication was firm and that they had an understanding in terms of assignments and other things like that. I did have a couple of funny calls home this past fall, or fall and spring. One involved running into a robot while on skateboard and falling off and, injuring himself. And what do I do now? Right. And the other one was a scooter ran over my foot while I was standing in a crowd of people. My foot's really hurting. What do I do now? So, so there was those moments. But yeah, that's definitely, it's easy to guide them towards resources and help them think through it. Right. That's because there's so many things that are available to them. So.
I think when I mentioned back to being on campus through some of like the welcome days and the different events, as parents, I think we are noticing all those support systems that are in place. As parents, we're thinking, oh, they have that. Oh, they have that. And our students, maybe not so much. And so, but it was really good because when our student has called home, I could remember a few, right, of the resources. And usually I just would listen. My husband, if he got the call, he would listen and just kind of coach him through what could be some possible responses and who he could possibly contact. We already kind of had an idea, but we didn't want to lead with that. Just encouraging again that independence and that confidence building. And that we're not immediately stepping in with a response. I mean, there are some concerns that parents, I would imagine, I would say they have to immediately give, but in most cases, students usually figure it out themselves. They just need someone to listen.
That's very true. And for anyone reacting to Mike's comment about the robot, you will be glad to know that those robots that deliver food on campus are gone. They were called Starship robots, and the company has ended their contract with the university, so they are gone. No more risk of any injury to skateboarders. But to Natalie's point as well, there are, and you'll learn more about this if you're attending family orientation, that there are specific structures in place for you to be able to receive reminders and alerts about any campus emergencies or anything that's going on about campus that the wider public should know. We, as an institution, will get in touch with you as a family member, particularly if you're registered in that system, so you are able to receive the same notifications that your student would about any potential dangers or anything that we can do, because we believe that in order to ensure that your students stay safe, you also should be informed as well. So, but thanks for your comments. I'm going to move on to a question that we've all had: roommates. So I know a couple of you already mentioned just a bit about your students' experience with roommates, but this one's specifically about challenges. How how have you supported your students when there are challenges with a new roommate, if you encountered any?
I know I don't think we really had any challenges until towards the end when there was a little bit. So initially, I think we talked about or briefly mentioned the kind of roommate agreement, right? And that was done up front. And that was certainly helpful. They'd established what time quiet hours were. They established where they would do some studying versus, trying to do that in the room, maybe. And then towards the end of the spring semester, it got a little more contentious, a little looser. And so that was problematic, especially as we got into finals time. And so there was a lot of communications between them back and forth to get more reasonable timeframes, or say, look, lights out, it's 2 a.m. already. I need to go to sleep. I got a final tomorrow, whatever. So it's just encouraging having those conversations, right, to kind of handle these things between the two of them rather than handling it through everybody else and their uncle besides the person, right? So that was what we were doing.
Yeah, I would say, there were no necessarily personality differences. It's just that there's quality, how I say, quality of life, quality of time issues, right? In terms of one person may be kind of a night owl, the other person goes to bed at 8 o'clock, and then what does that mean in respect to, the life within the dorm room? The other thing being just how you keep it clean, how you keep it up, right? That that is just something that everybody has a different standard. And so just working through those particular challenges in terms of, when you clean out, because you have like the little Breeze refrigerator, microwave little combo set there, how you're cleaning that out to make sure it's kind of clean and not moldy or anything like that. Picking up the clothes, trying to reduce the funk in the room, things of that nature. Those are obviously challenges you have with a roommate with that, has a different quality of standard of lifestyle. And so there's, just trying to navigate that is always, just not necessarily a challenge so much, but something you have to work through.
That's so true, Kari. And with that point, I will also say that while yes, there is the dreaded roommate agreement, students also have some additional integrated supports. So our residence halls are communities. Students have an RA or a resident assistant on every single floor, who is actually a student who has previously lived on campus and who is employed by our Housing and Residence Life office to be able to build the community on that floor, and also be the first person in line to be able to support that student. They serve on call and are there to directly help your student in the event of any lockouts, any disputes with a roommate, or just any questions that they may have outside of the typical business hours of the university. Additionally, we have certain desks around campus, about 2 of them that are staffed 24/7 by professional staff and students who are able to help assist really with a wide variety of issues, including lockouts and maintenance. And then, of course, we have a professional staff member who serves in every single residence hall who helps coordinate all the RAs and facilitate the growing community that students have throughout the year. So with that, there is an entire support network for students living on campus, as well as, which we'll talk about later on, students living off campus as well. So along with that, so even if you do have challenges or concerns about your roommate, you're not alone. There are people to be able to help support you as you grow that relationship. So thanks for sharing. I'm going to move on to our next question now. How do you encourage your student to seek help? Now, this one's a bit more generic, but the way I'd like to frame this is a bit more in academic terms. So if your student is saying that they're having difficulty with a particular assignment, professor, or course, how do you encourage them to seek assistance?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, like having the back and forth with professors is very important, right? And communicating with them effectively is very important, and respectfully too at the same time. That normally led to, good outcomes for Sam, reviewing ahead of time as well before they choose their professors. What the professor rankings certainly were helpful, right? In terms of having an understanding of how that particular professor handles their classroom. So you have kind of expectations up front, right? And then additionally, just having, at least from Sam's perspective, like encouraging him to talk to others too that may be able to help him with a particular issue in a particular class, right? Like, he has friends that are a little bit ahead, right? He has friends that may be in the same class or have taken the class already. And so he was able to tap into those resources as well. And that's super helpful. But there's also campus resources that are available too, that we certainly would point him to at the same time. So a lot of times it's like, you need to have the website on your phone immediately, and like just go there and go, okay, well, what's the problem now? Okay, go over here. So
That's so true.
Yeah, it was really, you know, encouraging our son to make that relationship, even though, he has his professors, go to office hours, go, form a relationship so that you feel more comfortable with that person and when you need help instead of waiting to the last minute and then you also are uncomfortable and you need help and it makes it even more challenging. Usually students can talk themselves out and say, oh, I can push through, I'll do okay. But at that last moment, it's a little bit too late often. So just saying, hey, it's okay if you need help, but get to know your professors a little bit in advance. And that might help you feel more comfortable if you need help later.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you said, Natalie, just getting to know your professors as well. And Mike also hit on this point, like faculty are, yes, very smart and they are experts in their field, but they're also human. And just like and they've built relationships and they are where they are because they've built relationships and worked with people. They were once students too. And while it may seem that there is either a power imbalance or just certainly a level difference, at the end of the day, not only can you learn from your faculty member professionally, but they may also become a mentor. They may also be able to help teach and really help motivate you throughout this class. And beyond that, they may have research opportunities or may even serve as a reference for the future. These may be some of your first professional colleagues, especially in close-knit fields. So don't hesitate to encourage your student to build those relationships and really take advantage of the whole encompassing part of being able to work with a faculty member. So thanks again for those comments. I'm going to move over to one that you all may or may not have been in a situation. So have you ever supported your student through a major change? And if not, if your student was curious about a major change, especially early on in their college career, how do you think you would have approached that situation knowing your student?
For our son, it's all about information, right? Providing the information that he needs to make a decision. And also at the same time, challenging him on the idea of switching away from the major in the first place. Like, hang on a second, you really like this particular area. What is it that's that you don't like now, right? Like, and is that really the determining factor in terms of getting rid of this major, or are you just exploring things, whatever it happens to be, right? So having that communication to get a better understanding of why, and then also providing or helping provide support in regards to, well, what major were you thinking about? Have you looked into it? What resources have you talked to? So on and so forth, right? To kind of help make that decision. We had a little bit of that kind of crisis conversation come up in the spring, I guess, when he was under the heaviest workloads he was in, and really was concerned about this as a future area for him. And so um, we didn't encourage him not to change majors, but we did ask a lot of questions around like what's going on, and really decided that uh, all of us decided at the end of the day that this was stress related. We'd revisit this later. So. Kari, you're on
You're on
mute.
mute.
Oh,
Thank you, Mike.
sorry. Yeah, our daughter definitely went through this, and she actually did change her major. But I think what we started with, my wife and I specifically, just started asking the questions, and the main one being why. What was the impetus for making this change? Why did you want to go from this, to that? Because the reality is, changing a major is, it happens. I mean, I was in college, I changed my major 4 times. I said, but at the same time, at some point you have to make a choice, right? So but it's okay. And we let her know that it was okay to change your mind. It's okay to think about your life and what you want to do differently. And it's okay to start, pivoting and making and going towards a different direction. And in that, she feels she's found something that really speaks to her and something she really wants to pursue. And all we're doing is just being supportive behind her, in that place, because this is ultimately her decision and ultimately her career and life, after this, after college, which she can change her mind again, who knows? So the reality is, having that conversation, I think in itself just allowed her to kind of crystallize her why, so that she feels more confident, and I think ultimately will be more successful in this major change.
Thanks, Kari. I appreciate your insight. And as Mike also said, it's very important to understand. It's very like the change process can be very stressful as well. Like it looks different for every single major as well. But the details and resources for all of those processes are publicly available information. You don't need to have access to your students' specific academic records to be able to understand what the major change process is like as well. So use the internet, use university and academic department websites as well as additional resources. So really just being there to help support. So thanks again. I'm going to move over to the next part, which is an interesting one. So the college experience is really potentially a student's first time managing a budget, whether they have a food plan or a meal plan with any sort of dining dollars, or simply are cooking on their own. As a family member, how did you guide your student through managing their personal finances and their own budget? Was this something that you provided more direct support on initially, and then sort of let them take over later on, or did they have an initial degree of significant independence early on?
I think for us, we had the conversations in advance. But there was a time where, my husband did have to have another conversation, mid fall with, check your account, make sure that you are not, just constantly, swiping, or I guess actually what, Apple Pay, and you have dollars, and you have all these, you have, the meal plan, like just watch what you're spending and keep track of that account a little bit. So he actually started to do better, and now he's really like leading it and doing great. But we did kind of have a little bit of a second conversation to just kind of bring him into a little bit better space with it.
I'll just go. Yeah, my daughter didn't realize how expensive Starbucks was until she started paying for it for herself, and that was a shock, for her. And and I think and I would say we as parents we kind of failed her, in terms of that personal finance piece the first year. So I would get the random text, Dad, I need 30, Dad, I need 50, Dad, I need da, 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 So I did that, and I just like, all right, whatever, that's my fault. And I would just send her, some of the money. But my wife really sat down with her and really talked to her about finances, and she really just had a really heart-to-heart conversation. And so she's working this summer, and she is in no way not, taking her money seriously. I mean, she's saving up like crazy because she now realizes if she wants to afford her Starbucks life, that she's going to have to really pay for it because we parents are kind of cut back. So part of her education was us admitting that we were wrong, and then two, saying now some of this, not all of it, but some of this is now on you to start
Right.
funding. And so now she's being much more diligent in thinking through how she's spending her money. But yeah, so but I just admit, yeah, we first year, yeah, we got an F. We definitely got an F on that one.
Well, Kari, I really appreciate your honesty, but with that point being, Starbucks is expensive, and at George Mason we have two of them, so it's going to be doubly expensive. So
Yeah.
so in that case, there's always an opportunity to go buy Starbucks, and it's for better, and they also accept meal plan money, so it's one of the number one
Oh,
culprits of that cash. So
Right.
that's right.
with
I
that,
just wanted to add, Brian, I just wanted to add one more thing to that.
go for
I
it.
think that um, I remember my first year in college, and it was explained to me, the meal thingy. It did not sink in. And I just remember, like, weeks into school, my meal plan, like my extra swipes were gone. And it was like all of us. And even though it was an unfortunate thing, it also was a moment of bonding. Like there was, we kind of all, my friends and I were in the same boat. And so I think, like, we don't want to, our kids have to go through their journeys, and some are going to be, have more knowledge in certain areas than others. But Natalie, we also had like that fall, thing of realization of like, wait a second, where are the funds and things like nature. But I think like that is the learning, and it's continuous. And so one of the things that I would say to answer this question is, don't stress yourself or your child with an expectation that you're going to have it all figured out like right when they start. You're not, they're not. That's okay. I think that's part of the process. But you learn, and then you adjust as you go, and they do too.
Thanks for sharing that, Chantel. That's exactly right. Especially being able to just stu you'll be with other students, whether you're living on campus or not. You'll be in people with similar meal plans, and who might have who have similar backgrounds, and also different ones. And in that case, if you do use your meal plan and run out, there are additional resources to also support you as well. Now, ideally things are expensive on campus, and it can rack up very quickly, especially if you're not used to it. So in that case, there are additional support mechanisms. We have our Student Support and Advocacy Center, which can help connect students to local resources. And we also even have our own Patriot Pantry, which is our food pantry for students who are on campus who may not have access to routine meals, or who may be in an instance where where something has not worked out with their meal plan. So thanks for sharing that, Chantel. I'm gonna go on ahead and move over to another question that's about disability services, or our Office of Disability Services. So, for family members, have you ever had a student has your student ever sought support from disability services? And how have you supported or guided your student to be able to receive accommodations at George Mason University, either academic or mobility accommodations through that office?
Yeah, we have personal experience with that. So we we ended up using both medical documentation as well as 504s that came through the school process, the public school process, in order to be able to have conversations with disability services or have Sam have conversations with disability services around what accommodations he could receive while he was at college. They were great. They're the ones that are responsible for writing accommodation letters to the professors so that they know what's going on ahead of time and what accommodations he has. They pointed him in the direction of tools that he could potentially make use of, pointed him towards dietary services for his medical concerns, right, in terms of his diet. And all of that was amazingly smooth and just has not been an issue the entire time throughout his entire first year. So very a great department to work with. And the school itself as well is very accommodating of at least, I'm sure they handle a lot of different situations, but as far as we're concerned, like very, very accommodating for Sam's needs. So really appreciate that.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that insight. And it's good to know that their office was really collaborative with you throughout that process. Now I understand, like, even from my own experience going back into or under K through 12 school, like the process can vary between institution to institution. It's not consistent, just like it isn't consistent across counties or even in states. So whether you're coming from out of state or anything, the office will be able to work with you and get documentation from your prior school or institution, whether it's a community college, high school, whatever, to be able to guide you through that process, which can be stressful, but their goal is to make it as least stressful as possible for both you and your student. So thanks for that insight, Mike. And
You're welcome.
we do have enough time for one question that I wanted to get to that was not on our pre-written questions. What was your experience as family members with books and supplies for classes? So I know that experience can really change throughout a student's course depending on like how the professor may communicate that ahead of time. But I was curious if, as family members, and sometimes as the people paying for it, how did you help your student navigate that process? How did you as a family member navigate that process? And just any insight you may have.
Yeah, I think so. This goes a little bit back to like the finance question, personal finance question, because my son, unlike my older son, my younger son is very frugal. So even though he knows that we would be paying for books for his college, like if he could find a way to get the text without having to pay for it, like that was his go-to methodology for this. But that, it was actually a fairly easy transition to have him go through the process of like checking ahead of time what those materials would be, looking at the syllabi of all the classes, right? So that the expectations were understood of the course before he got into it. And then, he knew where to go and find books and resources associated with the class. That was it was a very seamless process. It was never a case of, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to get, right? It was just more of like the timing element of it, of when the professor would release that information in order to be able to move forward and get the information that he needed. So.
Yeah, our student was pretty self-sufficient with that. We kind of talked a little bit about how much, book supplies would cost, and, just kind of made sure he had that available. We're also a veterans family, so there's the VMS DEP program here for public universities here in Virginia, so that gives you a stipend too. So he had the money, and like Mike said, he's even though we had to have that conversation about finances, he also is very aware of money and cost of things, and so he did pretty good, I think, and I've been pleased. So we didn't have to do really anything in regards to that. He was able to take care of that pretty well.
Thanks for sharing that, Natalie and Mike. And with regards to accessing textbooks or anything along those lines, your professors will not only submit recommendations like through the bookstore, like we call it eCampus now, but it's essentially an online bookstore that students will be able to directly view the selections from faculty, so there's no confusion about what books they need to get. But they can also check out the library. There are a lot of free resources there that they don't need to pay for from the bookstore that they can either view inside the library or even check out online and be able to routinely access. And oftentimes, if they wait till their professor pushes their syllabus out, the professor may even provide them an indirect way to access that entire textbook without having to even pay for it. So there are a variety of resources to opportunities, and it really does pay to wait for that. And especially if you're getting an additional stipend or anything, understanding how textbooks are really reflected in your overall educational expenses, either for like veteran financial aid, employer assistance, or specifically federal financial aid. So I really appreciate that perspective as well, Natalie. So I'm going to move on to our last question of the night. And this one's a little bit special. This one is a little bit special about your time as members of the council. Why did you join the Parent and Family Council itself? And I'm just curious because it is a volunteer role, and it does have a time commitment. There are only 2 times that you have to be on campus, but you still work on ongoing projects. So I was just curious if you could share your perspective on that.
I I didn't attend the initial session that my wife did, but I was in the kitchen when I heard, basically the back and forth of everything that was going on and in the session that she was attending. And afterwards, she and I talked about it and thought it might be a good fit to give it a go. I really like the school. I like a lot of the things that the school is doing, and so to be a part of the family council and have even more of an understanding of all the different things that the school has to offer, and to be able to spread that information to others is great, and helping other parents navigate their journeys as well, especially incoming freshmen. I mean, that's after going through it. I mean, I'm very happy to help out with that whole process. So that's the reason why I joined. Is I really like the school. I really like what they're doing. I really love the fact that they offer so many resources, and I'm just happy to help. So.
Yeah, for us, or for me specifically, pretty similar again with Mike, is just that, our older son who graduated 2 years ago from GMU, I was in a different space, busy, and I just didn't see the time. But I did notice the parent and family council, and when we were out there for events and saw the T-shirts and all, and I thought, oh, that seems pretty cool to do that. I love helping people. I love providing information, but it wasn't the time. And so now with this son, I thought, okay, I think it's time now. And so I was excited that, I paid attention, didn't miss the deadline, and was able to submit the application. It was great, the orientation panel initially, just kind of talking through what it would look like so that you could decide if this was what you wanted to apply for. And it's been nice being able to just be that, like Mike said, again, is just, to give that information, support parents now, especially this son is our 5th child to college. And the second one, like I said, at GMU. So I'm in the season where I think I have something I can help with. And so it's been nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. Just to add, for my husband and I can speak for both of us. We really were. This is Leela's our first daughter to college, and so I think the opportunity to volunteer was just so there weren't a lot of hurdles, which was really nice, and we were able to get involved very easily. But at the family farewell, I think it was the parent table. They were so welcoming, and I had really good conversation and connection, and that really inspired me to want to get involved. So I was personally touched by them, and their enthusiasm and care and concern. And I was like, this is a great thing to be able to get involved and do for other families as well, representing GMU.
Thanks for sharing your perspective, you all. And I can really tell, just like from all of the answers you've provided and just the time you gave tonight, that you do really care about being able to share your own perspectives and just being able to help provide even just the small time you're able to really make that difference for the family members who are navigating the challenges that you once navigated as well. So it's I know I do, just I know I do, but our entire team really deeply appreciates everything you do. So thank you. Now I'm going to move on to conclude for the night. So and with that, we have reached the end of our Q&A period and this session of the Family Support Series. I would like to give a huge thank you to our amazing panelists from the Parent and Family Council for their incredible insights and stories about being a Mason family member. Additionally, I want to thank everyone who attended this session and submitted their questions to us. As a reminder, this entire session has been recorded by our team and will be uploaded to our official YouTube channel and website in about 2 weeks. So on our website, you can also find free recordings of all of our previous sessions in the Family Support Series, and where we cover a wide range of topics on demand, free on demand at any point throughout the year. So we will continue to host these sessions going into the fall as well, and we will have plenty of reminders in Mason Family Connection. So be on the lookout for the next one. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.